Last week, I haven't, so somebody else has,
It was already logged in. It's like, so
they're already
I
mixed,
don't need that for now.
all mixed.
I wasn't even gonna be here. I just stepped out on my front porch and I blew down here in the
Yeah,
wind. Yeah.
yeah, I believe it. I believe it.
Ugh. How are you?
It was a lot of wind.
Wind blown.
Oh, I know.
No fun for the people at the track meet.
I know I'm supposed to go watch 5-year-old soccer after this, and I'm not sure they're gonna make it.
They will be
Swim.
blown over. 5-year-olds aren't very big.
Yeah.
We had JV tennis last week
Oh,
and Thursday, it was like 50 degrees and like 30 below wind chill. I swear.
oh, geez, yeah.
Like I had a coat and a hooded sweatshirt on and stuff. And it was like, it's ridiculous.
You're like, this is crazy.
What?
Then
We're having a meeting tomorrow?
Huh?
Outside?
What?
Special meeting tomorrow?
we are.
I saw something out there. I thought it's a special meeting, but I don't know what I didn't read all.
Oh, there's this legislative update thing tomorrow. Or,
Okay,
I don't know. It's tomorrow night.
yeah.
All I know is my wife's gonna be mad at me because she thought I was gonna be home tomorrow night.
Oh, no, so do you have
Yeah.
to go? Oh.
Yep.
She was anticipating quality time, Luke.
No, just wants me to make dinner. I've been pretty worthless the last 5 days.
You what?
I've been worthless the last 5 days as far as
Well,
doing anything.
cause I know how you feel. That's how I was for like 2 weeks. I don't know, the cough, like I said, it just wears you out.
It does.
You're just coughing and coughing, and then you're just exhausted. Huh? Anthony, is that AJ?
What?
Is that AJ? Anthony's phone?
Yep.
Felt the wind, I'm sure.
George?
Hey, George, how you doing?
How you doing?
All right.
Left my phone in the truck, I was telling them about it.
What? What is that like?
It's amazing how you look for that when you, I don't know, what, just every once in a while, we got phones.
I've had it in my hand and I'm looking for it.
I've done that too.
Where did they set it? And then I look in my hand, it's there with my keys.
Jump around looking for it and it's in your hand.
Yeah. Yep. Or one of my children have it or something.
was
Hey,
It's bare bones here.
I know. I hope we have enough people.
We've got quorum now with AJ, right?
I think that is truly aging.
Oh, okay,
AJ's on.
okay.
Where's Andrew? He's also on Zoom.
Andrew Steiger's here on Zoom.
Hey, Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yep.
Good with technology, Luke.
We are good to go.
So, everybody ready?
Yes.
I will now call to order the April 22nd, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The time is 5:45 p.m. Hillary, would you call the roll for us, please?
Grant. Caldwell,
here.
Thompson.
Here.
Steiger,
Here.
Samuelson,
Here,
Forced. He's walking.
Perfect timing.
Regulator.
Nice.
Here. Item number 3 is the approval of tonight's agenda. Any changes to the agenda for this evening? Hearing nothing, I'll entertain a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Item number 4 is the approval of the April 8th, 2024 minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Any changes to those minutes? Hearing nothing, I'll entertain a motion and a second to approve the April 8th, 2024 minutes.
Forced motions.
Steiger second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 We don't have any guests with us tonight, in person, and I don't believe there are any on Zoom, so we'll skip number 5. Move on to our first substantive item, number 6. Request from Alberto Rodriguez for a special use permit to operate a tattoo studio at 1409 Sunset Drive. Luke, would you brief us on this item, please?
Yeah, so this is similar to an item at the same address we had a couple meetings back. Where we had a tattoo artist that wanted to operate out of the 1409 Sunset Drive property. It's been a redeveloped property with a couple commercial spaces down below. And so another artist wants to operate out there as well. And so because they're independent folks, we have to treat them independently. So same type of request, special use permit, which will end up at the Board of Adjustment at their next meeting. And we ask for your guys' recommendation for those prior to that meeting. So that's the nuts and bolts of it. Happy to answer any questions.
Any comment or questions from the commission on item number 6? Hearing nothing, I would entertain a motion to approve the special use permit for the tattoo studio at 1409 Sunset Drive.
Forced motions.
Second.
Hillary, would you call the roll, please?
Steiger.
Aye.
Samuelson.
Aye.
Forced.
Aye.
Caldwell.
Aye.
Thompson.
Aye.
Regulator.
Aye. Thanks, everyone. Item number 7 is the review and comment on the designation of the expanded urban renewal area and on urban renewal plan amendment, adding 2 sections of land, the Dunn Industrial Condominiums, Fairway Grocery Store, and the Highway 28 beautification project. Luke, would you brief us on this item, please?
Yep. So when the city has TIF projects come up that they want to do, we have to do what's called an amendment to our urban renewal plan to add those in and to add those areas into our planning area for that. So we've got 3 items that have come up that will go before council. And so they are, I believe the terminology that is used in the letter from our bond counsel is that the commission needs to review the amendment and provide any comments as to whether the plan amendment conforms to or is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. So the 3 items are the Dunn Industrial Condominiums project, which is at 1050 Madison Street. On the map, that's the southern box there. It's down in our industrial area, and staff opinion is it does conform with our comprehensive plan as we have planned industrial down in that area. The second is the Fairway site in the north of the Norwalk Central area, highway commercial, plan for commercial in our comprehensive plan. And then the last one is a beautification project, which is a decorative fence or wall along the Highway 28 corridor through Lakewood and Echo Valley. You can see it kind of highlighted on the screen there as to what sides it would be on and for what length. And that would also be consistent with our comprehensive plan from a staff perspective. So all we would ask for from the commission would be a motion and recommendation that it would meet our comprehensive plan, if you also agree.
Okay. Thanks, Luke. Any comments from the commission on any of these items?
That last item will make a lot of people happy. I hear of that all the time, that fencing thing. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Will
that's,
will the homeowners get to choose whether they do it or not? Or have it?
I don't believe so. We're working with all of them to involve them in the process. I know that there are some that had somewhat newer fences. So there's some concern with that. I don't know all the details of how we're working through that, if there'll be any compensation for any of that, but
And is it going to replace the fence that lines each person's, or is it
Yep.
just like a foot in further from that?
I don't know if it'll be right on the property line or if it'll be technically on the right of way, so, but I do.
But we're
believe it's gonna-
replacing their
Yeah.
fence that's along
Yeah.
the street line, not just putting a fence right in front of it.
Yeah, so the benefit to them will be, it'll be a city-owned and maintained structure, so they'll have that rear fence in perpetuity in theory. So there's benefit there. We had reached out, this has been a project for a long time for the city. We'd reached out probably 4 or 5 years ago to all the property owners and just asked if there was willingness to participate, and with the exception of 1 or 2 property owners, everyone was pretty gung ho and excited about it. And the ones that weren't were ones that had newer fences that were like, well, I just spent, $5,000 on a fence and now you want to tear it out, which is understandable. So I don't know if they've discussed compensation for that or what have you, but not my project. I don't know those details.
I agree. I think it's been on the list for a long time and it'll be nice to get that moving forward.
I'm assuming that they won't put gates in or anything, because it'll be more of a stone or something.
Yeah. Yep.
And then can you mention you said there's gonna be condos down in the industrial area?
They're calling it the industrial condominiums. It's not condos like you would think of. It's not residential. It's just leased industrial space. So think like a roll-up door at the back and a door at the front. You'd have bays that you can configure into a bigger space or a smaller space, depending on who wants to lease what. So, yeah.
And there's nothing that's gonna change with the fairway, it's just adding
Yeah.
it in.
Fairway's already there.
Any other questions or comments on the 3 items? Hearing nothing, I would entertain a motion to approve that each of the 3 listed projects are consistent with the comprehensive plan.
So moved.
Or seconds.
Hillary, would you call the roll, please?
Samuelson,
Aye.
Forst,
I,
Caldwell,
Aye.
Thompson.
Aye.
Steiger,
Aye.
Reginator.
Aye. Thanks, everyone. Item number 8 is review of zoning ordinance review and update process. Luke, could you brief us on this item or
Sure.
present?
So I got a presentation I wanted to run through with you guys. I gave this presentation to council last Thursday as part of their council work sessions they do every month. Really just looking for some guidance from them on what type of involvement they would want to have in our zoning update that we plan on doing coming up in the next probably 18 months or so. So I want to do the same thing to you and get your guys' input on what involvement you might all have, let you know how council can decide they want to do some things and just have some discussions about that. So apologize in advance. I've been fighting off a cough for the last 7 days and you would have thought I was better by now, but I had the same issue on Thursday. So luckily I cut this presentation down from like 25 slides it was to like the 10 it is. So I'm going to breeze through this. You can have any discussions you want. I'll let you know what council decided. So, zoning update. Okay, so just a little bit of a history on some zoning stuff. Talk about the idea of doing an audit of our current zoning ordinance. And then the update rewrite of that zoning ordinance. And then we'll go over to council's involvement and what your guys' involvement might be. Real quick, zoning traditionally has had two faces and two reasons why we did it. One, to protect private property values, and the second one to address public health. And over history, those things have kind of developed over parallel timelines with various state and federal levels of involvement and requirements. In the mid-50s, that resulted in Norwalk approving our first zoning ordinance, and for a good long time, we operated with that one with various amendments and changes. In the late 90s, we adopted a new zoning ordinance that was a kind of wholesale change of everything, and we've been operating on that one since that time with significant and not significant changes over that. But for the most part, the base of the zoning ordinance today is still the base from 1998. So why do we do the zoning ordinance update? What's the purpose of it? We typically want to review that after our comprehensive plan update, partly because our zoning is tied to our comprehensive plan from the state level. We have to have comprehensive plan to be able to have zoning, and it has to be in conformance with it. Same thing with like that urban renewal plan stuff, right? Like we always want these things to line up. So we want to do that. We also want to make sure that it's we're having city regulations that guide the development we want. Ideally, the comprehensive plan should be talking about the development we want, and then we should be going back and looking, making sure that our development guidelines are actually doing that, and then ensuring that city goals are achieved beyond just the comprehensive plan. There's other goals. And so I put here, I'm just going to click through these. There's a lot of, and these are all just pulled from our comprehensive plan. And at some point I stopped pulling them out because this was a lot of stuff. But there's all kinds of things about housing. There's some stuff about economic development and growth like that. And really just the idea here is that this is a lot of stuff. It's a lot of information. We're not going to worry about that right now. We're going to really just talk about the main overarching thing of the city's main mission is to preserve and improve why people want to live and work in Norwalk, right? So we want to make sure that the regulations we have and the rules that we have are advancing that main goal. And so the first thing that we want to do with this is what's called a zoning audit. And that's going through our code and in-depth review of all the different requirements and asking some of those questions about, is this piece of code preserving why people want to live and work in Norwalk? Is it improving it? Is it, are there outdated practices that might need to be changed? You know, we want to look at those. There's already some things that we're aware of in our code that we've kind of earmarked over the years of this is something we want to change. And then also looking at best practices for potential inclusion. I was at the National Planning Conference last week, which gave me a lot of good information in addition to the code I currently have. A lot of good stuff from that as far as things that you can look at as far as zoning reform and things that we could do. So we should take a look at some of those practices. A big topic at the national planning level right now is how do we address the housing crisis right now, right? And a lot of that can be done through zoning. So that should be something we look at in the zoning audit is, does our zoning practices get us the housing and the workforce housing and all of this stuff that we say we want in our comprehensive plan? Second step after that zoning audit would be the zoning rewrite itself, which should be heavily influenced by that zoning audit. We're wanting to do a lot of legwork up front to talk about the things that we want to change here or the things that maybe are problematic. Maybe we're not saying how they're going to change, but we're just going to flag things and say, this is an area that should be focused on. This would be a more formal process. We go out for RFP, probably have a consultant that would help us with that, but we'd be able to give them this kind of audit report to say, hey, here's where we're starting from. We've already done this work for you to lead into that. And that's budgeted for fiscal year 2026. So fiscal year 2025 starts this July, I believe. I think I've got that right. So not this coming year, but the year after that. So we're a little bit ways out from having the project ready to go for the rewrite. So that gives us a lot of time to work on this zoning audit standpoint. So my question to council was, what involvement do you want? Do you all want to review every single one? Do you want to form a subcommittee? How do you want to do things? How frequently do you want to look at stuff? And what they kind of came back with was a periodic, maybe monthly, maybe not quite monthly review of just a chunk of the code. So we've got 12 months, let's say we've got 12 months we want to do this. We're gonna break the code up into 12 sections and we're gonna take a look at it and bring a section back to them and say, hey, here's our staff review. We obviously, and they did as well, want your guys' input that as well. So then trying to fit you into that as well, thinking there'd be a staff review, bring it to a planning commission meeting. Let you guys take a look at it, give your input on anything. Then we take that group of comments together to council. So potential a lot of work. I mean, the code is about 250 pages. So, you know, but if you break that up into 12 sections, it's maybe 20 pages of code a month. But that's kind of what we're going to plan to do. I say monthly and maybe not quite monthly because we want to make sure that we have a commission review prior to a council meeting. And we just know that the commission council meetings don't always line up as neatly as that. So there might be a 6-week period, 8-week period where we just have to line them up appropriately to be able to do that. So, and some of the bigger ones, we might decide to take a bigger chunk and spend a little more time with. I know some of the later sections of the zoning code, we might not have as much input in. Some of them we might just flag and say, we need to dig into this more when we do the rewrite. And there's not a whole lot of comments right now.
Wonder,
So-
is there maybe some kind of interstitial step that we could add, involving you, you know, if we're kind of working ahead 2 weeks, maybe some kind of step, George, we could, if there's a way we could summarize it or something, or distill it down so it's easier to go through all the steps. So in case there is any like discussion that comes up that would otherwise potentially slow our progress and need an extra month or something like that.
And I think you could always say like, look, from P and Z, we'd like to really focus on this section, but go ahead and take the rest out. And we want to have another discussion about this section. We could do that. How I see it coming to you guys from a staff perspective would be a staff report. We'll give you the full code section that we're reviewing with our notes as little comments to the side. But then in that staff report, we'll hit up, like, we're not gonna just say, here, go ahead and read it, right? We'll give you a bulleted list of things that we think are topics of discussion or topics of things to think about and what our opinions are of them. And then try to at least help you guys hone in on like, hey, we're looking at 300 definitions. Most of them are fine, but we want to, one of the things, my frustrations with our definition section is sometimes a definition will have a requirement in it. It'll say like, they'll define a fence. A fence is a barrier, whatever, but it's a barrier that is 6 feet tall, say. And it's like, our code shouldn't say that in definition. It should say in a fence section, how high a fence can be in certain areas, right? So making sure definitions define things, not regulating things. And so there's several things that we have there where we want to clean up definitions like that, but that's just one example. So we would call attention to those things when we felt they were pertinent, but obviously give you the full thing to call out things that you might think are worthwhile looking at as well. So that's the thought. If you don't want to do that, certainly we don't have to saddle you all with that, but
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely be interested in being involved in that process. I think that will help us with some of the change that has kind of come through with the order of this when the city council is doing things.
Yep.
This will give us a good base, and I know nothing like this has happened since I've been on P&Z. So I would like to be a part of that if the rest of the commission is willing.
it's a hard thing because it's a big code that you guys are, I mean, technically I'm responsible for, and you know, everybody in our positions say it to a T. You know, there's not a day you don't go by when you decide to open it up and read something and you're like, well, I learned that today. That's a thing that we have, but you never know that you need to learn it until it's there. So
Yeah, and
Yeah.
when you kind of break down, you know, what we do versus what council does, our focus is supposed to be very much tied to what the code will say.
Yeah.
Versus council has a lot of other considerations to take into
Yeah.
account. So I think if we have if we're involved in this process, it will just give us that much more, you know, background to help make.
And
those
when we
decisions.
review projects and there's things where, you know, well, I don't know that I like how the buffer is handled in this scenario between this thing, or, you know, right now the code says it, like, this is a good opportunity when we look at what's required of the city and we look at our comp plan, what we want the city to be and what we each individually believe the city should be from our own experiences and stuff. This is the way to talk about how we want the city to be, because these are the rules that are going to guide how the city develops going forward. So if we want to change something, this is a good time to get a handle on it, to talk about like what it is and understand like what a change to that could be. Because I mean, a zoning rewrite can be a pretty fundamental change. We could change nothing and keep it all the same. We could do what Des Moines did and go to a completely different style of code and change the game on everybody, right? So it could be two different sides of it, so.
Was there any discussion at council if there would be any public involvement in this process?
I don't think that they really got into that, other than it being at a public meeting, I guess.
The public meeting, yeah, public hearing, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Well, that would come, when we did the
Work session.
rewrite side of it, there would end up being. So when we get to the second side of it, that zoning rewrite and involvement in that, that's gonna have the formal process where, you know, our consultant will have a public input meeting at the beginning of the whole process to get other people's thoughts on the code and what it does and all that stuff.
Okay.
So this zoning audit review thing would be more of a staff, P and Z and then council thing, but certainly done in a public forum where if people wanted to show up and give their thoughts, we would always welcome those.
Yeah, I
It's a
think,
good idea. Look.
yeah, I think that's a great way to get, I mean, you can only allow people to be involved as they will be, but, by the time it's in the code, our hands from a P and Z perspective and council are.
That's why when we do the
tied.
actual rewrite, we want to have
Right.
that full public process
Yeah.
because we want to give people the opportunity to say, hey, city, we don't like what you're doing there.
Great, yeah, that sounds great.
Can I ask a question, or be open, or, without,
Absolutely.
I don't know how to interject, I don't want to be part of your meeting in the sense of, but, how do you know if something, what if, I see what's, might be there in the zoning, and then you could change it based on what you read. What about stuff that it's not even there, you can't even change it because it should be there, but we don't even know it's there? Is it just gonna rely on staff for that? And then, yeah, I don't want to sound demeaning from that perspective, but like Des Moines coming up with some new language apparently, and that.
Yeah, I mean, it's twofold. One, can be just like, hey, how does the code address this issue that maybe we don't know of?
Hmm.
Right? So one thing we were actually talking a lot about staff this morning and read some state code and seems like maybe we can't do anything with it, but short-term rentals, right? Airbnbs. Not typically anything we'd really worried about in Norwalk. Seems like not a day goes by where we're not getting more and more calls about that. And so, okay, maybe we want to start thinking about doing something. The code doesn't say anything about short-term rentals. The closest thing it has is some language about operating a bed and breakfast. And so we've always kind of like, well, we can kind of like, look, if one guy says that they want to do something, like, that's what it is, you know, you can do it. But owning a house that is completely vacant all the time, except for short-term rental, like that's a whole different animal, right? Well, that'd be something that we would want to identify that we want to try and address. The problem is,
You had one, almost. but
well, the problem is
they sold it.
the state passed a law in 2020 that I was not aware of, because again, you don't, not until you need to go research things, you become aware of it. The state does not allow cities to regulate short-term rentals. We have to treat them like any other rental property.
Oh, really?
So we cannot restrict short-term rentals in town. So those are things, when you have questions about that, we can bring them up, like, hey, do we really address this very clearly? Our zoning, we just did the zoning to add water tower into the, you know, our zoning's not real clear about a big public utility like that. Maybe that's something we want to spell more. Data centers are a big thing that's coming around, right? Our zoning doesn't talk anything about where a data center would fit right now. We have the ability through our zoning administrator knowledge to say, well, that's seems like most other industrial uses, so it would fit in industrial, and the zoning way it works always gives you the ability as the administrator to say, that's where I'm going to classify this use that isn't like specifically called out. But with that becoming a bigger thing that's coming around the metro, like we probably want to definitively call that out somewhere. So yeah, lots of stuff like that some of it just has to organically come up as we're talking through it, like, hey, how would we address this?
One more ignorant question from my part here. Our comprehensive plan, when was it last done?
Comprehensive plan, it was approved in December of 2022. So
Okay.
not that long. Okay. Yep. So good, that's the process of all this is kind of that, so.
That's follow up to the comprehensive.
Our last cycle of all this was 2013 comprehensive plan and a 2016 update to our zoning ordinance. That was a pretty substantial update to the zoning ordinance, but it wasn't a full-on rewrite of things. And I think with everything we've heard in our comprehensive plan and everything that has changed from 2016 to now, I think it's a good time to look at a full-on, what do we want Norwalk to be zoning code? Whereas that last zoning code, I mean, it was a model code that was developed for the metro suburbs, basically, and I think it was developed through Des Moines and then kind of a regional, I don't quite know, but I just know when I read other people's zoning codes, the language is a lot the same. And, you know, we have meetings where we talk to people in the community and say, we don't want to be Waukee, we don't want to be Johnston or Ankeny, and okay, I buy into that 100%. I believe you don't want to be that, but then when I read the rules of how to develop Norwalk, it's the same rules as how to develop Waukee and Johnston and Ankeny, right? So, you know, we want to look at that and see, is it time for us to have our own, right? So.
One really procedural question too. So changes like that, like those examples you talk about, like the data centers, Airbnbs. Say in this process, we do add that, change the language. Is that whenever those changes are made, like throughout the year, those go into the code immediately, or is there a period of time, like, is there a set time when all the changes from a fiscal year are all made at once? Or
when we just do one-off amendments and they're adopted, they go into effect when council completes the third reading, or technically when Lindsay publishes the ordinance. So within like 2 weeks after the council's third reading.
Public notice.
Yep. So once that's in there, then it becomes official. In this process, because we'll do one big code, it'll be, you know, all the little incremental things we talk about, like those will get assembled into one big document that we end up approving. We may, during that approval process, talk about a kind of grace period. We did this when we did a subdivision, a big update of our entire subdivision ordinance, where we said, okay, anything that we've gotten in, you know, now for the next 6 months is going to be able to use the old rules, because somebody buying land today might have been thinking about the old rules, and then those old rules had different standards and the economics of it penciled out different. So we gave them a little bit of a grace period where if you got in within 6 months of being adopted, you got to use the old standard, and then everything rolled into the new. So, you know, we may want to look at doing something like that, but depends on how big of a change we do too. So.
Yeah.
So in theory, like hypothetically, if one of us or more of our council, if they don't all agree on what's put forth, they could delay the whole change because the vote
Yeah, I mean, and
is
we could
no.
potentially, you know, and that all becomes the strategy then of what does council want to do? Do they want to just not approve the whole thing? You know, maybe they really just are concerned about the architectural standards and they not satisfied with exactly how that's done. So maybe we approve everything else but the architectural standards, right? Like, it doesn't all have to be approved at once. Ideally, that's what would happen because it just makes it the smoothest, but we could certainly redo it in sections if there were certain areas that like, hey, we didn't get this one right. We gotta go back to the drawing board on this section. Well, we can do that. We can keep it and go back and go back to the drawing board.
So even if we're reviewing it in chunks, it won't be approved in chunks necessarily.
No. Especially with this review, again, that review is gonna get assembled at the end into like our kind of thoughts on our current zoning code. And then that whole chunk of information is gonna get handed off to a consultant and say, here you go. This is what we think. Help us write a new code based on all these thoughts and our comp plan and best practices in zoning and all this stuff. So.
And then it would get maybe the public.
Yep. Okay. I don't think I got anything else for you. I'm sure I've got other stuff, but My brain is so fried right now that I'm still trying to dig out from the last 5 days, so. Yeah,
Thank you for all that information. George, any update for us from city council tonight?
We just talked about it for the most part, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else on community development?
I am good.
Okay, great. Our next meeting is gonna be May 13th, 2024 at 5:45 PM. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion and a second to adjourn.
Thompson motions.
4 seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned at 6:16. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, AJ. Thanks, Andrew.
thanks, guys.
Thanks. See ya.